Next, we will be talking about pet to threat. So we'll welcome to the stage Naina Tolbert, founder and CEO of Hire Black Initiatives. And, I got the music already. Shalomi Knowles, organizational psychologist of the Pet to Threat research, all about patterns of stereotyping and marginalizing Black women in the corporate workspace. Thank you all.
Hello. What's up, New York? Hey.
Hello there.
I'm Niani, and I'm the founder and CEO of Hire Black Now.
And I'm Shalomi Gomez. I am an organizational psychologist and the founder of Hume EIQ.
Right now, we'll talk about a really important conversation around pet to threat. But first, before we get into this deep conversation, I need to know what borough y'all are repping. I hear BX. I hear Brooklyn. Queens. Okay. I'm sad to share that I just moved to Jersey City, so not a laugh. Okay, me too. Good rent. All right, so I really want this conversation to be, Dr. Shalomi Gomez has a lot of great things to say, and I want this to be engaging. So if I ask y'all to get up out y'all seats, y'all gonna do it? Y'all gonna do it? Okay, all right, cool. All right, so we're gonna first let Dr. Gomez get started about her studies with pet to threat, and then there might be some time to get up, as I said, all right?
So I've got a PowerPoint presentation, which I think is going to be shown. Is it? Just give it a few seconds. Oh, okay. All right. So this research came to me from the work that I do with minority women professionals that are looking to advance their careers. And it's also my own personal experiences as well. And what I wanted to do was find out what is the challenges that minority women professionals are facing. And the seminal work for this was done by Dr. Keisha Thomas from the University of Georgia. And what she did was she tried to conceptualize all the things that we've studied independently, tokenism, isolation, and all of that, and give it a kind of like a more of a trajectory feel, like the whole complete experience. And she was looking at Black women academics in the university setting. What I did was that I used the same model that Dr. Thomas has used and wanted to see how it translates into the corporate setting across minority groups. So I'm looking at Black women, South Asian women, Southeast Asian women, Latinas, right? So for the presentation today, I'm going to be talking to you about what I found out about Black women in leadership. And so what happens in the pet to threat, if some of you may know it, and some of you, this may be new to you, but what Dr. Thomas basically suggested that when a minority woman leader first goes into a new job, a new career, she may be perceived as a pet. And we've already talked about these things individually, but the pet would involve tokenism. So you're the token hire, right? So checked off, the diversity and inclusion, the diversity hire. But that also leads to feelings of isolation, right? You are visible for your ethnicity, but you're invisible for your skills and your competencies, right? You have a feeling that you're being patronized to, like, oh, let's give her the easier work to do. Now, when you start challenging the status quo, that means you are competent, you are showing that you can take on those more challenging roles. That's challenging the status quo. You move in potentially into a threat position, where feelings of isolation continues, your professional legitimacy may be questioned, and there's a lack of rewards and a lack of promotions. So that's what I did. I went off and found 72 minority women to study. Of them, 18 were Black women leaders, and they were from management all the way to C-suite, okay? And do you want me to continue on, or should I stop there?
Yeah, let's stop here real quick.
Yeah.
All right, because when I was talking to Dr. Gomez, I was saying that I think it's even more than pet to threat. I think it's threat to pet to threat. And what I say by that is oftentimes we have to change our hair. We have to change the way we talk. We have to lie about what we listen to or what podcasts we listen to. We got to lie about how we dance. We have to lie about what we did that weekend so that we can seem less threatening, right? How many of you guys have felt like you had to change yourself so that you can seem less threatening? Be honest. Be honest.
Wow.
All right? Sometimes that has come with me. That has happened to me, but with me having to change my hair. I didn't always have locks, all right? And I oftentimes had to change the way that I talked around people. So I wanted to share that with Dr. Gomez about how sometimes it is lessening that threat. We're automatically perceived as threats a lot of the times, so that to get into this pet situation, right? And how nonetheless we find ourselves into this threat position at the end of the day. No matter how many PhDs, masters, bachelor's degrees that we get, we find ourselves back into that situation. So I want to know, Dr. Gomez, how, like, you see all of these different things, right, and we're talking about tokenism, we're talking about the invisible skills. I kind of want to hear and see how many people feel like they might be in the pet situation. If you're in a pet situation, please stand up. Please stand up. I'm gonna stand up. Jorge's in a pet situation of the career. All right? Thank you so much for your vulnerability. Now, oftentimes we see ourselves in mid-level management positions and director-level positions, and people might see us as a threat. How many threats are in the building? Yeah. Stand up. Stand up. Look at all the threats in the building. All right? So I want you to stand up if you felt like a pet or a threat at any point in your career. Please stand up. Look at that. Please get the pictures. Please get the pictures of the pets and the threats. All right, so these are everybody that you see around you is people that you could turn to. We have this same lived experience from who we are. So thank you. You guys can sit down. We have the same lived experience, and I just want to put her research into actual, into reality, into the applied world, like as our experiences are. So wanted to pause for that.
That was very powerful to see that many, nearly all of you stand up, and also to see men stand up as well. So this is not a phenomenon, because this is not a phenomenon just for women, and I suspected that would be the case. But what is really important with this study is before, you're feeling these things in the workplace. You're going around and you're experiencing that, and you're going, am I really feeling that? Is that really happening to me? Right? And what Dr. Thomas has done is she has coined a term. We can now use it. We understand when we say pet to threat what it means, right? And by naming something is how we can dismantle it, right? So I want you to understand when you are experiencing these things, is this consistent? Because that's the thing with pet to threat. It's consistent. It carries through. So name it. So don't, and the thing that we've been doing so long is normalizing this behavior or this treatment. So the first step in all of this is to recognize that that is the experience that you're having, and then we can dismantle it. So, yeah.
I love how we talked about naming it, because it's always been so difficult to talk about pet to threat, because sometimes it's like, hold up. It's such a microaggression. It's like so many small tears, right? It's someone speaking over you constantly, someone questioning how legitimate your career is. All of these little things that someone might end up responding, hey, that's just how Tom is. A lot of just taking these microaggressions on, and we're dealing with a sort of trauma, right? I love the fact that with this, and I would even take a picture if I was y'all, right? So that when you're feeling some word, you can at least be able to define that word that you're feeling so that you can identify the pattern. And in that, you'll be able to document how many times have you felt, how many times have this come up, rather than just feeling like, I'm feeling like something's wrong, but actually saying, hey, today, this happened. Today, this happened, right? And so is there any other thing that you would like to talk about when it comes to how to get out of the pet to threat situation? Or how do people cope? The people that you talk to, how do they cope with their pet to threat situations?
Sure. So I'll take the first one, which is if you're in a pet to threat situation or if you want to prevent pet to threat. One of the biggest things that I've seen in my work, as well as with the research that I did, was to find your allies. It is really important to find your allies, whether it's within the workplace, whether it's outside your workplace in terms of your support structure, right? That's number one. And, as much as allies need to find you, you need to find them, right? And all of the women that I spoke in this study, they had allies across the spectrum, whether it was a white male, older white male that was their boss. It didn't matter. It was people. People are allies, regardless. That's number one. The second thing that I think is really important, which is something that I think women, minority people really struggle with, is advocating for yourself. And advocating for yourself is something we are not taught to do. It's something that can be quite uncomfortable to do. So this is my advice for how to advocate for yourself. Number one, please note this: your work is not going to speak for itself.
Talk your ish. That's what it is. Talk your ish.
Right? So your work is not going to speak for itself. You have to pick your head up from your work and look up. And that means, right, as pet to threat, you may be noting them down, but also note as well your accomplishments, the things that you have done in your project, whether it was, you were scoping someplace for the thing or you were enabling your team to do something, right? Write that down, because if it's not there in the tip of your tongue when you talk about it, then what? Because your boss or your leader, they're not connecting the dots. A really good boss would be doing that, but more than likely they're not connecting the dots. They're busy with other stuff.
Collect the receipts.
Right.
Yes, the translation.
Right? And so then how does it come that you can promote yourself and advocate yourself in what I call a tasteful way, not in a boastful way, right? Because that's something we're uncomfortable doing. So I think if you do it from a place of genuine enthusiasm, right? And you incorporate the people around you. So, we were able to, seal the deal on that particular, whatever, the sales or whatever, and it was our team effort, and this is what I contributed, right? So it's those kinds of ways of artfully, tactfully advocating for yourself, right? So that's to make sure that you are more visible for your talents and get you out of that isolation stage and change the narrative of being a token.
I have some additional, let's clap for that.
I didn't talk about the coping stuff, but
I'll get into some of that, but I do want to add some things. Have the group chat ready so that you remind yourself who you are, right? Because sometimes and oftentimes as Black talent, I'm not sure if you guys have heard this, but if you have heard this, I do want you to stand up after this. We have to work twice as hard for half as much. Who's heard that? Stand up, stand up, stand up. Who's heard that? Ain't that some stuff? All right, now let's sit down. So the reason why I say that is because if we're a threat, we're a threat. Right? We're a threat because we worked that hard, right? We're a threat because we are that person. And so we need the support system. And maybe you can find someone within this audience that is going to remind you who you are. Because oftentimes when you're facing constant trauma and constant microaggressions, you can forget that you are a threat, all right? You can forget who you are. You can forget all the stuff that you've gotten and went through in order to be sitting in the place that you are. And all the stuff that makes you shine so bright that people are scared. All right, so please don't forget to lean into community, and especially also lean into community of people who have experienced similar things as you. All right, so that's another thing I just wanted to add before we go into the coping mechanisms.
Yes, spot on, Naomi. I love that. The coping strategies that. So I don't want to leave you on a downer and say, well, pet to threat. But these women, these black women leaders had an amazing way to cope with all of this. And, you know, when we were talking about it, we pressed up, and it really, I think, resonated with you, was, and you just mentioned it, was having a really high work proficiency. Like it's not just coming to a meeting, having read articles and being prepared for the meeting. It's not coming with just the questions and sitting up in front, you know, making sure that you're present and you take your seat at the table. It's also how you presented yourself. Your clothes, your hair, it was the whole package. That's number one. Number two was setting boundaries. It was very clear that the way that they cope is to set boundaries. Right, between work, do I trust this person? How far can I go? Work and home. And then the number one thing that was specific for black women leaders is the art of diplomacy. You've got it down pat. And I would love to give you an example of what I mean by that. So one of the women that I interviewed, so when I collected this data, it was in May of 2020, at the tail end. And as I was getting to interview more women, George Floyd got murdered, right? And I was finding it really difficult to schedule black women leaders because they were inundated with having to deal with DE&I initiatives at their organization, whether it be a town hall.
Somehow.
Right.
Somehow we end up with that role, right?
And when I finally got in contact with them, you know, they were just clearly exasperated that on top of everything else, they're having to deal with this. This is specifically also them in being in leadership roles, that they were the go-to person. And this one particular leader, she said to me, can you imagine, my boss came to me, and this is, remind you, May 2020, so when this is all happening. My boss came to me and he asked me privately and quietly, because I guess he trusts me, why can't I say all lives matter, right? And anyway, as she was telling me her response, I could viscerally see how it was affecting her, right? So, and as she was telling the story, she's going through the motions of what she told him. And number one, she had to quickly compose herself. She was triggered, right? She was triggered. She had to check her emotions. She had to put her emotions aside. She had to weigh in her mind, how am I going to answer this question, weighing what she wants to say versus what she can say, right? And the thing is, she has to frame it in such a way that it's a teachable moment for him, right? That is mad diplomacy skills, right? And that's something that we want in leaders. So that's why I say when we have these coping strategies, diplomacy, own it. That is a really tough skill to have, and it's so necessary in leadership. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to share with that one.
Shout out to our diplomacy skills, all right? Snap on that. All right. All right, so I want to take it to Q&A. I see that we have to take it to Q&A. I want to see if you guys have any questions from the audience.
Can you please go back to the last slide so people can scan the code to ask the question?
Oh, is it the one back?
There we go.
There we go.
There we go.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So I have a few here. So the first one is, how do you handle / address microaggressions?
So microaggressions as I define it, it's like mosquito bites, right? So the first mosquito bite, okay, you got bitten once, so you decide whether you want to deal with it or you're not. But if it gets prevalent, you're getting bitten quite a bit, right? So again, you're thinking in your mind, hey, how do I artfully deal with this where I'm not blowing my cool and composure. I think it's your call whether it's worthy of addressing. Is this someone that I have to interact with on a daily basis? Is this someone that is a part of my team, right? And if that's the case, what you have to do is, what I would like you to do is to compose yourself a little, like just like in the diplomacy example. Compose yourself, take a breath, reframe that you're going to teach this person. Choose if that's something that you want to do. If it isn't, you have to just let it go. I'm sorry, it's really hard, but sometimes letting go a microaggression is important. Again, it depends on the type of relationship that you have with that individual, if it's worth having a conversation with them about it.
I definitely think it depends. I think that it's really important that things get addressed as soon as certain things happen, if it is something that will bother you, I also think that it's important to be able to have someone that you can speak with about whether or not, like, am I bugging? Have a work friend. Maybe that doesn't work. That's not inside of your job, right? But have someone who you can turn to about how can you address a specific situation, because it's only so much that you can take if you don't speak up about things. And so, yeah, it depends on the situation, though.
Another one I have here is how to prove your worth in a working environment.
Ooh, proving your worth. That's a very good question. So I think that the biggest thing that I like to talk about when I'm talking to people in the higher Black community, you guys can join, is having a brag book. So always knowing and having those clippings of, hey, this person said this nice thing to me. If you come up to me and say something, then I'm gonna be like, can you email me that? All right, cool. So that when you are talking to someone, you also have the confidence, because you can remember and go back to, hey, this VP said this about me. Or if someone asks, you can refer to exactly what the VP said. You should also know your KPIs. And this is something that I feel like a lot of people don't really have conversations with their managers about. But what are your key performance indicators? If you're not exactly sure about what your key performance indicators are, it's what is your manager trip on more than anything else, right? Or what is your manager getting measured on? Because once you know your key performance indicators, make sure that you are tracking them at least weekly. You can use something like an Excel sheet. You can sometimes use something like Dash This, but make sure that you are measuring and tracking your performance so that when you first get on a job, you can say, hey, this used to be at this. I was able to make sure that this is more efficient. I was able to cut costs, any type of thing like that, so that when you're having conversations about review time, you can be specific and you can have these exact screenshots. You can have all of these different things for any type of conversations around negotiation, around review season and everything like that. And the third thing is make sure that you're loud about it. So loudly, humbly brag, right? Make sure that your manager is not the only person who knows what you're working on. Try to make sure that their leader somehow knows, right? And so whether you have a Slack channel that's general for everyone, you can say, hey, just saying that, we increased this by this amount this week. We increased this by this amount. We were able to cut costs by this amount. Just wanted to share with you guys some of these news so that everybody can know exactly what you're up to, so that your manager isn't just taking up all of the credit from you. But that's how I would say proving your worth is. But before we wrap up, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, I think those were really good points, right? And if I want to add to that would be, if you get a compliment from someone, send them an email thanking them for that compliment, right? Because that also reinforces to you that compliment was your way. In addition to, I love the brag book. I think that is so important to track what you have done, what you have contributed, and therefore it's in your memory when those times comes, because you don't know when those times are going to come to advocate for yourself. And you may have missed an opportunity too. So, yeah.
And we're going to wrap up, but I want to say one more thing. If someone compliments you, ask for them to share your name or mention that in a room that you're not in, right? And I need for every one of us to start mentioning people in rooms that we are not in and that someone else is not in. So something that I do is I try to commit to having a conversation and saying, like, tomorrow, there's Black Women Talk Tech too, you know, like making sure that you're always mentioning other people who may be considering you behind your back. There's doors and blessings that can be opened for the other person and yourself. So in every single conversation, plug somebody else. Yep. And ask for plugs too, all right? We are in this together. We are a community. We're not doing this alone. We gotta stick together, y'all, all right? So I hope y'all promise yourselves that. And thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.